Hey, hi everyone, and welcome to today's Facebook Live. So, welcome to Breath of Life Alchemy. My name is Jennifer Lynn Roseman, and I teach people just like you how to awaken your inner healer by merging ancient healing practices with cutting edge science in order to reclaim control over your health and well being. And for today's live, we are going to be talking about complex post-traumatic stress syndrome and how that impacts chronic pain syndromes. So if you have any questions for me during this process, please feel to reach out to me in the comments. If not, we can talk about them after this session is over. So I want to just start by centering in and really arriving here together in this virtual space. So if you have the time and space to join in, I just invite you to find a comfortable seat, or even if you're standing, just take a moment and feel the ground beneath you. If you're sitting in a chair, feel your sitting bones on the chair, your back resting on the chair. Or if you're laying down, just feel the contact of your body with the support beneath you. And as you do this, you'll notice I took a deep breath. Perhaps you did too. You'll just notice that your consciousness is becoming more fully into the body, into the present moment. Or you might even notice some resistance to that. And that's perfectly okay. Just notice whatever shows up for you. As we are all arriving here together, all of you is welcome here. Every aspect of yourself, every resistance, every connection. I invite you into this space with grace and an open mind. And so as we settle into the present moment together, I just invite you to approach this particular live with a sense of curiosity. You know, as I like to say in these lives, I feel like we're putting on our exploration hat, and I'm a huge fan of Indiana Jones, so I'm always wearing like an imaginary Indiana Jones hat, and I got my whip in case I need it. Um, but just welcome here into this space with me with curiosity, experimentation, exploration, and we'll just see what transpires. So for today's live, I do have a PDF prepared. So I am going to attempt to share my screen. I hope this is going to work. We'll see. Okay. So hopefully you are seeing something. And welcome to this space together. Okay. So complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So I want to say that this whole presentation was inspired by a document that was shared with Nicole LaPera. She's a psychotherapist. She does a lot of trauma healing work. And this was a free guide that she sent out, which I tweaked because I want to really tailor it to the chronic pain aspect. But a lot of what is here is from this recent PDF document that she sent out recently. So we're going to go over this first because it's a beautiful way that she presented the basics of this material. So complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a natural response to childhood experiences that involved chronic anxiety, neglect, or danger within our close relationships. And so most people have heard of PTSD, which we think of as, you know, after a car accident, we might have PTSD, wars, PTSD, severe abusive situations, PTSD. And that usually involves a single incident of trauma, right? There is an acute event that we react to, and some of us get stuck in the trauma of the event, especially our physical bodies store this trauma. Complex PTSD, as you can see, is a little bit more dynamic. It's a little bit more involved with our past history. So C-PTSD differs in these ways, right? So we experience the hurt and overwhelm in a way that we couldn't escape it, and it was ongoing. Okay, so we experienced hurt and overwhelm, we couldn't escape it, and it was ongoing. And the experience of a hurt and overwhelm took place in a relationship with a key attachment figure that we trusted or that we were supposed to trust, right? So this is typically a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be, someone in the religious community, someone that was an authority figure that we were supposed to trust. But that trust was broken through various actions and events. And another way that this differs is that there was no secure or safe adult to help you process the experience that happened. And what this can do is it can create a feeling and an internalized belief that we are not good enough, that we're broken in some way, and we are unsafe within the world. And so I want you to just pause. So this could be triggering for some of us if we've had these experiences, to just feel into that. Okay. Feeling into it in a very small way, right? And just notice your reaction as you read and as I say these things to you. And this will become important later on because our reactivity is often the thing that creates and participates in chronic pain syndromes. So I want to go over how C-PTSD impacts our sense of self. So one of the ways is that we can constantly feel overwhelmed. And as children, I've talked about this in some of the other lives I've done, but we learn how to understand and regulate our emotions from the adults around us. So from our primary caregivers who are supposed to be models of this, right? But oftentimes they're not. And if we didn't learn this from them, we can consistently feel like we're out of control or that something just isn't quite right, which is how I feel a sense of out of control in my body. And we might spiral when we make small mistakes or wonder why everyone around us seems to have healthy relationships when we do not. Right? So you might be someone who's really hard on yourself, right? So when you make a mistake, there's a lot of negative self-talk. Or when even someone else makes a mistake, there's a lot of judgment that seems like disproportionate to the actual experience a lot of the time. Another thing is that we can dissociate often, right? So from a nervous system perspective, this is when we go into freeze mode. So we have fight or flight, and then we have freeze mode, which is often dissociation. And so when we are a child and we're experiencing constant stress or overwhelm, especially within our family unit, right, or wherever we grew up in the household, we naturally disconnect to cope. It's way too painful for us to be in the present moment, so we check out. And in childhood, some examples of this are daydreaming, spending a lot of time alone, having an imaginary friend, or fantasizing with living with another family. And the pattern often continues into adulthood where we struggle with procrastination, being present in relationships, and using escapism to cope. And escapism can look like a lot of things. So for some people, it can be drugs or alcohol. For others, it can be gaming. For other people, it can be scrolling on their phone. For other people, it could be TV. It can be various things. Eating is another way. Number 3, mood swings. Who's got them? I've got them. Mood swings. Mood swings are actually a symptom of chronic dysregulation, which we've talked about in the past. And this is going into fight or flight mode constantly. So when our nervous system is constantly in a state of fight or flight, our moods can change drastically throughout the day. Because we cannot regulate our own emotions, because we never learned to from our primary caregivers, we tend to look to other people to regulate them for us. And this puts us on an emotional roller coaster where how we feel is based on how other people feel. So when I read this, I mean, this really, really resonated for me because what I've recognized even more recently is that my identity is oftentimes based on how other people are feeling. And so I'm noticing how I'm being in the present moment. Like if you take away other people and I'm alone, I always feel like, oh, I can find myself. I have um a sense of beingship when I create the space and silence for myself that I don't have when I'm around other people, because I'm so sensitive to how people are behaving and feeling around me. Another sign of CPTSD. So another example of what can happen is that we have little or no childhood memories. And so, as I talked about before, the difference between implicit and explicit memory. Explicit memory are things that we can easily recall. They're a part of our everyday world and imagination and experience. Implicit memories are not. They are somatic, they are subconscious, and they also can become automatic. Okay. So, and that's why these implicit type of memories, even if we don't cognitively remember them from our childhood, they still exist in the body, right? Which is why I love the somatic and nervous system work, because they're still existing in the body and they still need to be dealt with. So they still exist in the body, but we can't recall much in our mind. Constant stress can flood our brain with cortisol in these situations, and it impacts the part of our brain responsible for memory, which is why we can't remember these things. Because if the stress was so high when we were younger, if we're dissociating, the cortisol shuts down these parts of the brain that help us actually maintain memory of the event or the situation. So you don't cognitively remember, but our cellular memories in our bodies do remember. So often people with CPTSD will say, I can't remember anything major that happened, but day-to-day life was filled with chaos, inconsistency, or parent figures who were disconnected and shut down. I want to add or volatile, right? So that their emotionality was very volatile in and of themselves. Struggling with authority is number 5. Who does this? I do this too. This is why I work for myself. So often this shows up as struggling listening to or following rules or structures. In the past, authority figures in our lives might have been controlling, manipulative, or shaming. This creates a pattern of rebellious behavior that often impacts our ability to be consistent or take direction. So it's a reflective response, right? Well, automatically saying, like, if someone tells me to do this, I'm not doing this, I'm doing the opposite, right? I do the lot. Number 6, you feel like you don't belong anywhere. I don't know if anyone felt like that growing up, but I know that that's something I constantly used to express to my mother, and I never really understood why. And my mother used to actually express that to me, right? So there's this inherited CPTSD that's generationally passed down, because if our parents didn't have good parents, then they typically bring those types of behaviors into their child rearing experiences. So our core needs as children is to feel like we belong. And we know, or we need to know, that we are valued for who we are, not what we can do for other people. If we didn't get this, we have an overwhelming sense that we don't belong or that the world is unsafe and we cannot find our place in it. So this is very common in terms of not experiencing unconditional love, right? If your behavior when you were little was conditional for love, then this is an issue for a lot of us, right? So meaning, like, if we had to behave in a certain way, or we didn't get love from our parents or affection from our parents or our emotional needs met, then this can play a big role for us. So number 7, You have issues concentrating or following through. And this is because, as we said a little bit before, long ago, we started to dissociate when we were really young. And we went into a state of freeze when we were overwhelmed by our environment or our experiences. Again, especially when we were little, especially during the ages of, well, in utero. So before we were born to the age of 7 or 8, it's when we're in a hypnotic learning state. And this type of coping mechanism, going into freeze and dissociating, makes it difficult to concentrate, which leads to a lot of procrastination. A lot of people with C-PTSD describe themselves as feeling physically stuck, unable to follow through with what they've planned. Number 8, you wear a mask. Because you've never fully been able to form a sense of self, you mask your true thoughts and emotions. You almost feel as though you're performing and can't really be your true self. This can lead to feeling anxious in social situations and overthinking everything you say or do. Okay, so we'll just take a pause for a moment before we continue and just sit with yourself, close your eyes, maybe place a hand on your heart and just check in and see if any of what we just spoke of resonated with you. Maybe if you were triggered, and just know that it's okay. Then again, once again, connect with the ground. So meaning feel your feet on the floor. If you're sitting in a chair, feel your sitting bones in the chair. Maybe feel your back against the chair. Again, just making contact with the space, the support that's holding you. And we'll maybe just take a few deep breaths in and out together. So inhale deeply through the nose. And maybe exhale with a sigh through the mouth. We'll do that one more time. Inhaling when you're ready through the nose, filling your lungs. And exhaling with a sigh through the mouth. And if you're ready, you can release your hands from your heart and open your eyes again. And once again, join me back in this virtual space. Okay, so if you're ready to move on with me, I invite you to do so. If you need more of a pause, know that this is being recorded and you can come back. So take your time, okay? So now we're going to go into how C-PTSD impacts our relationships. So one of the ways it shows up is having abandonment and or trust issues. So rather than feeling safe or nourished in relationships, you often feel unsafe and skeptical. You might question if your friends actually want to spend time with you or if your partner really loves you. You might crave intimacy and at the same time fear it or push it away. You often end up sabotaging your relationships because at your core, you don't feel worthy of a loving relationship. Just take a moment and let that settle. For me, that hit home quite a bit. So number 2, people pleasing. So because we feel like a burden, we people please as an attempt to keep our connections. We believe that asking for our own needs to be met or asserting ourselves will only lead to rejection. This belief creates situations where we betray ourselves or accept behaviors that are unhealthy or dysfunctional. And I know this is involved, right? We're talking about C-PTSD, but for women especially, this can be something that is ingrained culturally within us, right? People pleasing, bypassing our own needs to serve other people. Number 3, we feel awkward or uncomfortable expressing ourselves. So talking about our emotions, asking for help, Our being vulnerable is overwhelming or even terrifying. This comes from consistently being shamed, rejected, or isolated from love in childhood. Eventually, we learn to shut down and to stop expecting a safe relationship with anyone. Opening up feels dangerous because we've never been met with loving acceptance. And I want to say here too, right? We're talking about relational things, but it's also how we relate to ourselves. So for me, a key part in my healing was recognizing how I was unable to accept my own emotions, my own emotionality, and an inability to accept my own vulnerabilities and weaknesses, and how even admitting to them would feel overwhelming and terrifying. And so when I started to learn how to accept all aspects of myself, all of my behaviors from a compassionate space, learning about why I tend to be certain ways and have these tendencies and programs, it really helped me gain a sense of self-compassion and acceptance, which is, again, just really key in terms of understanding some of the components that we need for our own healing. So number 4, we tend to be highly controlling or type A. Hooray for type A. Hooray for control. I love control. Getting better though. So it's important to note that control is an attempt at achieving a sense and feeling of safety and comfort. Our controlling nature can come out in many ways, such as criticizing how people do tasks, not letting people help us when we need it, shutting down or giving people the silent treatment, blaming others for our behavior, keeping score in relationships, guilting people around you, and snooping or spying. Number 5, you lie or leave out important information. So many of us, when we were younger, were punished for telling the truth, or even punished for being who we were, right? Something about us was too much, too out of control, did not feel safe to our caregivers or parents. And so we learned to lie or avoid sharing everything so that we could stay safe. Lying can actually become habitual. When we lie about meaningless or little things and don't actually know why, most of us feel safer if we keep our partner in the dark, which can deeply impact trust within our relationships. Ultimately, lying is a shame-based behavior that we learned as children. So again, another reason to start having compassion. If you're someone that lies or leaves out information, or if, let's say, you have a partner or a good friend that does so, just know it's coming from a wounded place. Okay. I just feel like it's so important that the compassion piece, learning to have compassion for ourselves and others. All right, number 6, anger issues. So anger is typically a go-to emotional state for anyone with C-PTSD. Anger, I want to say frustration too. They go together in Chinese medicine, all ruled by the liver. Side tangent. But underneath anger is usually sadness and grief. We might not even know it, but we're grieving the loss of our childhoods, our sense of safety, and our ability to feel good about who we are and even what we're feeling in the moment. These anger issues can come out the most in our close relationships or in our relationships with ourselves. So, for example, our mom might make a small comment and a flash of rage goes through our body, right? We're instantly triggered. Or we might make a simple mistake and feel strong anger towards ourselves, right? We can just do a lot of negative self-talk or negative punishment, actually. And that anger can bubble up and cause outbursts and reactivity that we later regret and shame ourselves for. Number 7, you take most things personally. I do. I really do. Again, learning to unwind these patterns, but this is a really big one for me. So we often believe that everything happening around us means something about who we are, instead of understanding that people's behaviors are mostly a reflection of how they feel about themselves. So even small incidents can send us into a shame spiral where we question our self-worth. Number 8, you overgive. Very common with people pleasing, also known as fawning response from a nervous system regulation perspective. So many of us have been caretakers our entire lives without having our own needs met. And this can start early in childhood. For some of us, our parents actually relied too much on us as children in a way that they actually needed us to support them, right? Which is not good. It creates a feeling of an abandonment and forces us to grow up way more quickly than we should before we even have the emotional capacity and brain development to do so. So this creates situations where we give to people even when they don't reciprocate or take advantage of us in some way. You'll know you're overgiving in relationships if you feel resentful. So again, a really big key here. If you're starting to feel a sensation of resentment in any personal interaction, interpersonal reaction, that's a time for you to stop and check in. Because some days we're able to give more than others, right? So for myself, being in the healing world, right? The healing space, holding space for other people, I have to be very, very aware of how much I am giving and this tendency to overgive in spite of myself. And for me, this resentment piece was really key because I noticed that it would show up. And sometimes it would show up at the end of the day. Sometimes it would show up during my day. Especially outside of when I was working, if a friend, family member, or my partner asked me for something, I would be automatically resentful, automatically triggered. Because again, I gave too much of myself during the day that I had nothing left outside of that. And then I was being asked to give more and I had nothing left to give. It was like giving from an empty cup, which feels not good. All right, so we're going to move right along. Hopefully you all are following with me. Again, if you need a pause, take a pause. Super important. If you have C-PTSD and tend to dissociate, because this is a lot of information that can feel triggering. And oftentimes, a lot of us, when we're triggered, we dissociate out of the body. So try to stay with me if you feel like you can't. Again, grounding experiences, feeling the support of the chair beneath you, maybe even looking around the room that you're in, taking a space pause from the screen and doing that to bring you back into the present, or pushing pause on this recording if you're watching it as a recording. All right, so hidden trauma. What is interesting about the impact of C-PTSD is that a lot of people don't know that they have it, right? And we can kind of understand why, but by what I've talked about before. So especially if we didn't experience physical or sexual abuse when we were younger, if our parents were present in the home, and again, if we can't remember any catastrophic event, we don't think that anything was a big deal when it was. And it really sets up our personality and impacts who we are today and how we feel about ourselves, and also how we potentially develop chronic pain and illness. And so this is about childhood emotional neglect, which is quite common given our culture. Many of our parents aren't even aware that they're neglecting our children's needs. And this is often because their own emotional needs as parents weren't met in childhood. So again, they don't know any better. This is where the compassion piece can come in, right? So without the skills to attune to and connect with their children, parents are often unaware that they're even lacking these skills and do not intentionally hurt their children. And I love this. Here's a little checklist. So below are some signs that you might have experienced childhood emotional neglect I'm going to read these out loud in case you're watching this on a small screen, so you can just make a little mental checklist. If it's positive, just count that as number one for you. So number one, I was typically brushed off or ignored when I went to a parent figure feeling upset. 2, I was regularly called dramatic or sensitive when I expressed my emotions. 3, I was left alone and without comfort or explanation whenever stressful events or conflicts occurred. 4, I spent a lot of my childhood comforting my parent or parents or giving them encouragement, but I cannot remember them doing the same for me. 5, I was regularly pushed beyond my limits to perform or achieve. 6, I often did things or acted out negatively or positively to get attention. 7, I have few or no memories of my parent figures being warm or affectionate or expressing love towards me. 7, I hid a lot of how I felt and dealt with my feelings alone. 9, I was often described as easy or told that no one worried about me, and a lot of focus went to others around me, oftentimes a sibling. 10, I was rarely asked questions or had any interest taken to get to know my individuality. So if you checked 3 or more signs of CEN, it's likely that you may experience the following: feel empty or disconnected, are highly anxious, feel depressed, have trust issues, constantly fear abandonment, struggle with perfectionism, chronically blame or shame yourself, feel everyone is mad or upset with you, or you can't ask for help. And so connection, if you recall, one of the first nervous system lives that I did was all about the ventral vagal state, which is where we feel connected and safe. And connection is actually our natural preferred state. But adults who've experienced CEN can have many different symptoms from the lack of secure connection in childhood, which makes it hard to even feel safe connecting in their present adult self. So one of the most common and pervasive symptoms is a fragmented sense of self. So we're going to go over and explore fragmentation. I've talked about that a little bit in lies, but what gets repeated gets remembered. And sometimes we say things in different ways that lands more for us, right? So the fragmented self. As children, we can't make sense of a parent figure that neglects, harms, or mistreats us. So we will do anything we can to keep this foundational connection, regardless of how we're treated or how safe we feel. So you can see how this just sets up these subconscious wiring patterns that wire us for this need for connection and love that can sometimes create these patterns that later on can create harm for ourselves and for our relationships. So to stay connected, we suppress parts of ourselves that we feel won't make us lovable and express parts of ourselves that we believe will get us love, affection, and approval. This creates internal conflict, and the end result is shame, anxiety, and hypervigilance. For me, what I recognize is that I actually used the feeling of being sick to get affection and love from my parents when I was little, which is really interesting, right? Because I was born into an ill body, so I experienced sickness, but I very quickly learned that when I expressed illness or sickness in a stronger way, I got more affection, more attention, and more love from my caregivers, from my parents. And I recognized, gosh, I think this was even just a year ago, how alive that still was in my patterning, right? And I think why I became so chronically ill, because it was this subconscious way of me trying to get attention and love from people around me, and even from my own self, right? Custody. Okay, so here's the core symptoms of a fragmented adult: hypervigilance, only feeling comfortable in relationships where you are caregiving or people pleasing, sensations of toxic shame, feeling unworthy, and feeling uncomfortable in social situations, and feeling zoned out most of the time, also known as dissociation, also known as being in a state of freeze. So I want to go into emotional flooding for a little bit, because this plays into the chronic pain, which I'll go into in a few moments. So our amygdala, which is in our brain, is an alarm system that tells us if we are safe or not, if we should be in fear or not. When we have complex trauma, complex PTSD, we have many false alarms. So our amygdala, they literally shown, gets to be enlarged in a lot of people that have complex PTSD. And these false alarms go into hyperreactive states. And we can become flooded with these intense thoughts, overwhelming emotions, and even sensations, right? This plays into the chronic pain, often resulting in moments of high reactivity. So here are just some general things that can create emotional flooding. A passive comment from a coworker, your partner being quiet or silent, someone not responding to a phone call or a text, feedback that is or seems critical. And what might happen when we're emotionally flooded is that we can't speak without crying. We dissociate or leave our bodies. We yell, slam things, or say things that we regret. And our thoughts can spiral, and we can't concentrate on any tasks for the rest of the day. So I want to just take a pause here and just talk about chronic pain. So when we experience chronic pain or any chronic symptom, right? So I talk about autoimmunity a lot because it's something that I have been diagnosed with, I have experienced, and pain is often associated with autoimmunity. But we can also have chronic pain syndromes for many other reasons. And, what I find so fascinating, they've done studies with MRIs and x-rays for people that have chronic back pain, especially chronic low back pain, but it could be anywhere, chronic neck pain, whatever, anywhere in the back. And they've shown that there are people that can have the same type of disc degeneration, arthritis, scoliosis, etc. And some people will experience no pain with that, and other people will experience excruciating pain with that. So what is the difference? They don't know, right? It doesn't make sense. The theory from a nervous system perspective, from a psychological perspective, is that there is an underlying C-PTSD component that's contributing to the pain cycle. And so what we can see and understand is when our limbic system, which is the part of our brain that controls our primal fear response, and our amygdala gets enlarged and hyperactive when we have these C-PTSD experiences, it can exacerbate feelings of pain because we're literally emotionally fearful, resentful, angry about the pain that we're in. So it's kind of like the live I did, I think it was last week, about emotions, right? We have these primary emotions that are hardwired into our nervous system that are universal. We can't control: fear, anger, sadness, grief, surprise. But then we have these secondary emotions that are layered on top of that, which are based on our beliefs about those feelings, right? So again, if we were taught that anger was not okay, we have these secondary emotions that complicate that. Well, now I'm angry because I'm angry, or now I'm sad because I'm angry, right? And so the same thing can happen with these pain syndromes. And especially if we're in a hypervigilant state, right? So for me, my tendency when I have pain is like, this means I'm going to die. It's clearly only going to get worse. I'm spiraling again. I'm losing my health, right? Like, because this is such a hardwired pattern that these things can still come up for me. So, my job when I experience pain is to, number one, be aware that this is my tendency, right? So, like, you can ask yourself when you're experiencing pain, what is the story? There's often a personal story that I'm telling myself about this pain. And again, it's not just like I'm in pain. Maybe I broke a bone. Maybe I have scoliosis. Maybe I have um, Crohn's disease, whatever it is, something that's creating pain. And it's my belief or feeling about that thing that's creating an additional amygdala limbic system response that floods the body with more cortisol, more pain signals, because now I'm not just physically in pain, but there's an emotional pain component on top of that. So they're layered, if that makes sense. Um, and so it's just number one important to recognize this. Again, like awareness is the first key step in creating any change, right? We have to be aware of these patterns that we have. So I think what I would like to do now is actually maybe do a kind of a somatic experiencing practice that can teach us how to work with our pain syndromes. So if you are up for that, that would be amazing. Again, just kind of um, find comfort and space for yourself if you have room for that. And again, if not, pause this, we'll come back. So if you're in a safe space, I want you to take a moment and just connect with yourself. I invite you to close your eyes if that feels safe for you. And once again, we'll start, as we always should, with connecting to some degree of a sense of safety in the present moment. And so we're going to use the technique of grounding once again. So with the eyes opened or closed, again, for me, it's always easy to feel things with my eyes closed. But again, it's up to you. Just make contact with the support beneath you. Really feel how whatever that is, the chair, the floor, the bed, the couch is supporting your physical body weight. And just take a nice inhalation. You don't have to change it, but just for one moment, just bring your attention to your inhale. And with your exhale, see if you can let your body sink more into the support beneath you. Maybe just keep connecting with the breath, breathing in, just connecting with the inhale, feeling that alive sensation that comes with the in breath. And as you exhale, connect more deeply with the space beneath you, grounding more fully into the present moment, allowing the support to hold your physical body. And just keep doing this, just breathing in and out. Again, you don't need to change the breath, just connect with the sensation. And with each exhalation, inviting that feeling of dropping into the support beneath you. And in doing this, see if this energetically just takes a little bit of the load off, the pressure off energetically that might be felt in the system, in the body, in the emotions, maybe even in the energetic field if you can sense that. And what I would invite you to do next is see if you can bring your awareness to the space between your body and the wall in front of you. And if you need to open your eyes to do this, you can, but you can use your imagination if your eyes are closed. And see if you can just feel into the distance, the space between your physical body and the wall in front of you. Again, this is a way to help take the energetic load off of the physical body and create more spaciousness and expansiveness in the energetic field. Sometimes we have to change the energetic field before our physicality, our physical body can shift. So next, I want you to do the same thing. Feel the difference between the right side of your body and the right side of the room or the right wall. And as I do this, I notice that I have taken a deep breath in and out, which is just another sign for me that I am dropping more into the present moment and that my nervous system is starting to calm down. Okay, so now do the same with the left side of the body. So see if you can get a sense for the space between the left side of the body and the left side of the room that you're in. And now do the same thing with the back of the body. And this definitely needs to involve more of your imagination, which is always good practice. So trying to feel the space between the back, your back, and the back wall of the room that you're in. And now do the same thing for the top of the head and the ceiling. Feeling the space between the top of the head and the ceiling. And now feeling the space between your seat, your butt, and the floor, or even the ground. So let's say you're on the second floor of a building. See if you can feel the difference or the space in between your butt and the ground floor of the building. And now see if you can expand your awareness to all of those things at once. The front, the back, the sides, the top, the bottom. See how spacious you can expand the awareness of your energetic field. And if you have trouble with this, totally fine. Again, I invite you to just explore, get curious, and maybe just play with what you can feel and what you can't. It's all just information. It's all just very interesting. What we notice, what we don't. And so now, since we've created some spaciousness for ourselves, which I think of as like purposeful dissociation, right? We're zooming out of the physical body. We're going to bring our attention closer into the body. So I want you to see if you can have an awareness of the air on your skin, or even the clothing on your skin. Just feeling that boundary of our physical body with the energetic, etheric space outside of our bodies. And now I want you to bring your attention to an area that you might be experiencing pain or discomfort. And so just become aware of where that area is. And some people that have fibromyalgia or more diffuse pain that's all over the body, I just want you to pick one spot that feels the most alive to you right now that's really calling your attention. But I want you to notice as you do this how there's typically an epicenter of the pain. What I like to picture is like my pain is like a bullseye, and there's this intense red center. And then further out, when you zoom out from the bullseye, I think it's like white and black lines. No, I can't even remember. Um, but it's typically like white lines of a target, right? So as you like zoom out and get wider away from the epicenter of the pain. And so instead of going to the red epicenter of where you feel your pain, just go to the borders of it, right? So the edges of the target of space. So let's say I'm experiencing pain in my lower abdomen, and I feel it centered just above my pelvic floor, like my pubic bone area. Instead of going right into the center, I'm going to zoom out more to the sides of my body where I'm feeling like that pain is not as strong. And so just stay at the borders. And as you do this, I want you to notice the percentage of how much better it feels. And even if it's 1% better, I want you to really lean into that 1% better. And when I say lean into it, I mean really capitalize on it. Really bring all of your awareness and attention to that 1%, 5%, 10% better that it feels when you zoom out to the periphery, to the borders of where the pain is originating from. I like to imagine it as like the border is like softer and fuzzier. And as I zoom into the center, it gets more solid. So if that's helpful for you, you can use that visualization. So stick with the fuzziness, the fuzzy borders. And as you do that, see if that percentage of feeling betterness grows and increases. Sometimes it does. And as you sit with that, again, just notice with curiosity, oh, that's feeling a little better all the way out there. And that signals your brain that the pain is not as emotionally catastrophic as you were originally perceiving it to be. And we're just starting to break the pain loop, right? We're rewiring our neurology right here with this. So stay with the edges. And now we're going to pendulate a little bit. So pendulation means we're going to go further in towards the center, that epicenter of pain, and then we're going to go back out, right? So like a pendulum swinging back and forth. So now I want you to very mindfully lean back towards into that epicenter of pain and just notice what happens. For me, I noticed that that red epicenter gets a little bit brighter, maybe a little bit bigger as I lean into it. And as the sensations become more intense, more activating to the nervous system, I sit with it, I breathe. And for me, I'm going to put a hand there, maybe both hands. So right now my hand is on my belly. And if your hand can't reach the spot that's in pain, imagine that your hand is being placed there, or another hand being placed there. That's really reassuring. And I want you to say to this area of pain, either out loud or in your mind's eye, I see you, I feel you, I am here with you. And as you provide yourself with this own degree of comfort, emotional safety, again, perhaps that you did not receive when you were very young, notice what happens to the pain. Maybe it stays the same, maybe it changes. If it's changing and feeling better, lean into that percentage of betterness. I don't care if it's 0.5%, 2%, really lean into that. It's so important that we start to teach ourselves how to feel better. And it sounds bizarre, but it literally involves rewiring our neurology to give us permission and safety that we don't have to feel the pain. The pain is not as necessary as we subconsciously believe that it is. And if you are someone who leaning into this pain activates it more and you're not feeling the activation calm down at this point, the pain begin to soften, even if it's a small percentage, zoom back out to the periphery, to those fuzzy borders where that edge of the pain was. And even if you need to go outside of the body, right? Like we did in the beginning of this exercise, you can do that. Feel again the space between your body and the walls around you. And you may notice as you do this, how the pain itself might activate and then deactivate. So for me, what I'll notice is it might start going in like a pulsing wave pattern. And it might be slow, it might be fast. And I'm just recognizing it as a pattern that's happening. And I'm not emotionally attaching to it. There's more of this degree now of curiosity, like, huh, it can go up and it can go down. And it can go back up again and it can go back down again. And when I just notice that with curiosity, it literally subconsciously tells my brain and my body that I have way more control over my pain than I originally thought that I did. And that creates more empowerment and that creates more safety in the system, which again then dials down the pain extremes, right? So I imagine like there's a little dial. If it's at 100, it dials it back down to 50%, maybe even dials it down to 0%. And so just notice what's happening in your body as you do this. Some emotions might come up. A memory might even come up. And our only job here is to, again, remain curious. You don't even have to be compassionate, right? Oftentimes we can access curiosity when we can't access compassion. So just remain curious about what's happening and just watch it. And just see if you maybe experience some energetic purges. So for me, I'm noticing that my eyes are tearing. And my breath is becoming a little bit more deep. But it could be something different for you. And there are some other tricks that I would like to go over with you as well. So let's say the discomfort or pain that you're feeling is hot. There's a sensation of heat to it, or even sharpness. What you can do is find a place in the body that's feeling the opposite of that. So if you're feeling the pain as hot, you can go to a place, like literally do a scan of your body for a cold sensation, and then really focus your attention on wherever that spot is that feels cold. So we're looking for the opposite. If your sensation of pain feels really sharp, again, search anywhere in your body or outside of your body for the opposite sensation. So someplace that feels soft, supple, giving. Again, maybe even that like feeling of fuzziness that I described with the exterior of the target of the pain area. And stay there. Bring your attention there. And what this does is it tells our brain that we can be experiencing two different opposite sensations simultaneously. And what this helps us do is recognize that we can shift our attention to shift the degree of pain that we're feeling, right? So if both things can be true in one time, and our hypervigilant brains are just going to the pain, going to the pain, going into the center, going into the center, what we need to practice is zooming out, going to the opposite sensation, because both are literally true at the same time. So we're not lying to ourselves. We're not deceiving to ourselves. We're taking the time to, acknowledging the pain is there, but also it's not there in this other respect. Okay, so if you're not already doing so, really lean into whatever opposite sensation of pain that you're experiencing. As if you're zooming into the center of your target of the pain area, zoom out to the fuzzy borders. And once again, notice how much better it feels when you zoom out or when you go to an opposite feeling, opposite sensation of what the pain is signaling to your body, what your pain feeling is like. And then I want you to reconnect with your breath, your inhalation and exhalation. Reconnect with the, again, ground beneath you, the chair, whatever that is. And when you're ready, you can start wiggling your fingers and toes, opening your eyes, reorienting to the room, and coming back into this virtual space once again. Okay, so welcome back, everyone. So let me know what you think about this experience, what you did experience, how you felt about the lecture. My eyes are still tearing a lot. And questions that you might have. This is a big topic. And the concept of chronic pain it's a big one. And again, knowing that we might have these C-PTSD experiences that are contributing to our chronic pain. Again, it's just like having the educational knowledge that can help us hack this for ourselves, right? And starting to teach ourselves that it is possible to control the pain that we're feeling, right? It might not go away, but we can learn to control it. And what I found is that when I learned to control pain, right, because as a complex post-traumatic stress disorder human, I love control. And so control creates safety. And so this is literally how we can do this. We can start feeling into how much control we actually do have in our physiology. And as we do this, oftentimes, at least for me, our pain syndromes can decrease. So I'll give you a really good example of this that happened to me recently. I was playing with my dog and he jumped up and kind of clocked me in the chin, and it literally dislocated my jaw. It was very painful. I couldn't chew for a day. I couldn't open my mouth really fully. And what's so fascinating, and I was, again, you do start to develop so much pride when you start actually applying these lessons and these skills, because it is just a learned skill. The previous me would have freaked the heck out. I would have been running to the doctor. Oh my God, my jaw is dislocated. I mean, it was swollen. It was a mess. But I didn't. I practiced these techniques. And as I practiced them, what was interesting is that I started to have these awarenesses of what would make me feel better. So I'm like, okay, well, if I massage like this, it will make it feel better. If I apply my THC CBD cream, that will help it feel better. And yeah, it was really interesting to just watch how I didn't get paranoid about it. I didn't get hyper vigilant about it. I felt that tendency, right? I felt that pull to do that, but it didn't happen. And I did end up seeing a Bowen work practitioner. Bowen work is big in Arizona. It's not that big anywhere else, but they do very interesting physical manipulations of the body that help reset the nervous system. She adjusted my jaw, and there's actually more pain temporarily, but it went away really fast. And I truly believe that if I didn't have these skills, it would have been way worse, because I would have made it worse because of my emotional investment in the pain itself. So again, I just want to express this is a learned skill. We have much more control over our pain syndromes than we may think that we do. And I would love to hear your feedback about this lecture. I would love to hear your experience of the practice that we did. And yeah, please reach out to me. The somatic experiencing work, it's a learned skill. It's also really helpful to do one-on-one with someone else, right? Because oftentimes as we're learning this, it's hard to ask ourselves the question that we might need that could bring more regulation or harmony into the system. But I'm trying to teach this in such a way where you can learn more easily to do it for yourself, but it does take practice. And so if you didn't experience a lot of pain relief with this particular practice and session, I want you to know that it will get better. So this is the first attempt. And know that the first attempt, we're never as good as when we repeat it and keep learning how to do it. And again, keep leaning into the good, which is something that people with C-PTSD really need to learn how to do. And it is also a learned skill and a practice, but we can all do it with each other's support. So thank you so much for joining me today. I am so sorry that this live is so long, but I was in the flow today, and so I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you next week. And again, please contact me with any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.